Hey, welcome everybody. This is Stephen Howard with another edition of Discussions on Great Leadership. And boy, do I have a special guest for you today. Ken Summers has a long, outstanding career in human relations. Turns out, funny enough, Ken and I both lived in Singapore at the same time in the 1990s, I think it was, and we didn't know each other then. We met a few months ago, and so a pleasure to have you, Ken. Welcome to the show, Discussions on Great Leadership.
Thank you, Stephen. I'm very grateful that you've invited me to be a guest today.
Oh, well, I'm looking forward to your comments. And Ken, everyone gets the first same question, which is simply, what does the term great leadership mean to you?
Well, I'll tell you, it's a hard question, but I have a very simple response.
Okay.
I think great leaders are those who others want to work with. And I want to underscore the word with, because most people would say something like someone to work for. And that's not how I define great leadership. Great leadership is an individual that others clamor to have opportunities to partner with.
I like that. So instead of great leaders creating followers, they create great partners, it sounds like.
That's my point of view. I think that as a leader, you have an obligation to demonstrate that partnership behavior in many different ways.
So can anyone be a great leader, or is this just simply a term we use for the C-suite?
Yes, but.
Okay.
And I think, and let me comment on the but part. To me, deciding to be a great leader is quite literally a choice. And I think that maybe not everybody, but most people can be a good leader or a great leader. And I think that those leadership behaviors that characterize a great leader are pretty simple. Great leadership is characterized by observable behaviors. And let me give you a few examples.
Okay, great.
Trust being the number one among those behaviors. And, to further drill down, to me, trust is further characterized by three dimensions. You have to be authentic, you have to have good logic all the time, and you have to be able to demonstrate empathy. So trust is a foundation. A couple of others that characterize great leadership are being real, allowing oneself to be vulnerable at the right times and in the right ways. And importantly, and I think this is where a lot of leaders really don't deliver, is the commitment to provide consistent, ongoing, constructive, actionable feedback.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think that those are a handful. And if I may, I'm going to share a story of how I was awakened to this personally.
Sounds good. Go ahead.
At the time, I was the head of human resources for Morgan Stanley in Japan. And I had come to Morgan Stanley after about 20 years in IBM. And at that time, IBM was a very hierarchical, almost military in its management structure and style. So that's how I learned to be a manager.
Right.
And I'll distinguish between manager and leadership on that point. So here I am, new kid in town, learning the organization and behaving the way I was taught to behave in what was a really great training ground in IBM. About 2-3 months into the job, my direct report team took me out for afternoon tea, and they tore me apart. Absolutely ripped me to shreds. And this went on for a couple of hours. However, it turned out to be one of the most valuable 2 hours I spent in my entire career, because they awakened me to how I was behaving, how I was managing, how I was controlling, and I was the furthest thing in the world away from leadership. And I had to make a decision at that point in time. Do I make this work? Do I learn from the mistakes that I was committing? Or do I go forward and continue in the behavior that I had, which probably would have led to a failure at some point?
Yeah.
So that was talk about a splash of cold water. It hurt, but I'm eternally grateful for what they did.
Oh, you're lucky. I think you might have been ahead of your time. I think a lot of people are going to be facing that in 2022 when we come out of the pandemic, and the control and command style for those who are still doing it, 10 years ago or 5 years ago or even 3 years ago, they're going to have a hard time leading people out of the pandemic, because a lot of people have decided that work may not be the number one priority in their life. They want a little bit of work harmony. Yeah.
Indeed. I mean, it was just in the news feed of minutes ago. I guess in December, we had 4.3 million quits in the United States.
Again, yeah.
New record. And people are not quitting just because there are other jobs out there. They're quitting because they're not getting what they need in the work environment, which really kind of leads us to your new book in some ways.
Well, thank you. Ken has had a little insight to my new book, which is going to be on humane leadership. I call humane a combined word. I created the word from humanity, and harmony, and the focus on creating harmony in the workplace. And I think you're absolutely right, Ken. I think that control and command. One of the things I say in the book is leaders have to unlearn management and relearn to be human. And I think that's going to be critical.
Absolutely. I mean, there are those who would say that management is still required in certain environments. And, let's take a typical operations environment where, you're very production oriented. There are circumstances where management behaviors, traditional management behaviors, are going to be appropriate in a really high transaction environment. Having said that, you're still working with human beings.
Exactly.
And you have to be able to segue between managing tasks and leading people. Yeah. And that's going to be a challenge for many, many people.
Yeah, I think I share with you. I think managing people is a 1980s construct. You don't manage people, you manage processes, you manage procedures, policies, anything like that, as you were saying. But you have to lead people, and that doesn't matter if you're on a manufacturing floor or you're, in an ivory tower in, Fifth Avenue in New York City. You have to lead people.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I know one of the things that you like to talk about is, how can managers learn to become leaders? And it's a complex question with a very complex answer, but given the amount of time that we have today, there's a couple of things that I would offer, and one is get to know the whole person of the people who work with you. They're not robots, or if you want to get sci-fi, they're not androids. As a leader, to become a leader from being a manager, or to get that leadership dimension to your job, you have to coach and mentor for success. And again, I'll differentiate between coaching and mentoring, because there are times where you want to mentor people to help them learn new things. And there are times where you want to coach for behavioral adjustments. And I think it's important for manager stroke leaders, especially as we enter whatever the next normal is going to be, to recognize mistakes are going to be made. And I think one of the things that differentiates a good leader from a manager is, how do you respond when mistakes are made? Do you take it as a learning opportunity, or do you punish?
Exactly. And I think managers react to mistakes, and as you just said, leaders respond. They're more thoughtful. They turn it into a learning opportunity. So your business today is helping business leaders and their teams diagnose and solve the problems of leading people. What are those problems? What are the common problems you're seeing today in January 2022?
Well, I'll tell you the one that I'm most worried about, and is turning up with I believe is increasing frequency, and that is I think the popular phrase that's emerging is location bias.
Yeah.
And by that, what I'm talking about is, as we continue to be in either a remote world or a hybrid world, those who are not in the office on a regular basis, those who are not, caught at the coffee machine or the water cooler, where you can have those informal exchanges are at risk of losing something. And I'm particularly concerned about people who have been hired into an organization during this COVID period. And onboarding them, acculturating them is much more challenging in a remote or a hybrid environment. And I think back in my own career, how much I learned from my very first manager about how to behave, how to get stuff done, how to influence others. And sharing those insights and teaching those capabilities is going to be much more challenging when you're not face to face every day of the week.
But they're not insurmountable, though, correct?
No. But it's going to require a new capability set for those.
It is. Yeah, and it is. It's going to be, it goes back to what I'm writing about, is that focus on people first and then results. And I'm not suggesting people over results or people over profits, but people first. Understand, you have to just be conscious of that. Much like you, I think people need to be conscious of their biases, whether it's racial biases, sexual biases, gender biases, whatever they might also have. I mean, we've been facing that in the workplace for a long time too. We've had to overcome that.
Absolutely. And inclusive behaviors are going to be even more important as we develop whatever this next normal will be.
Okay, so the you agree that anyone can be a good leader. And I agree with you earlier when you said not make with the but. Some people want to be good individual contributors. One thing I think organizations have to do is understand, if somebody wants to be a super individual contributor, don't force them into management. Don't force them into a leadership position. It's a bad fit.
Oh, good grief! I couldn't agree more. The number of times I've observed people who are great individual contributors, subject matter experts, and they get tapped on the shoulder and said, "Ken, we're going to make you a manager." And I think back to the very first time I was a manager.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And, fortunately, I had some good coaching along the way. But, no, I completely agree. Success is not defined, career success is not defined by how big your job is. Career success is not defined by whether you're a leader or not.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's interesting. I think you and I both grew up, so to speak, in our leadership styles in Asia. And I think Asia teaches you a lot about that, and about putting that the person first, but also having patience and learning to do things a different way. So final question, Ken. Yep, sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, having a little bit of humility.
Or maybe more than a little bit today. But humility is a great skill to have in today's world. And it goes back to what you said earlier. I mean, one of the things I always think about is, my early leaders, no one would ever admit a mistake. But my first job was in 1977 out of college. So, but I think today leaders have to be able to say, you know what, I don't have all the answers. Here's what I know today. Here's the ambiguity we're dealing with. Here's the uncertainty that we're dealing with. This is what we know today. Let's work it out together as a team. Tell me what you know. What are you experiencing, particularly on the front line or with your customers or in manufacturing, whatever it is. And then let's work on this today. So I think that humility of being able to say, I don't have all the answers is so important.
Couldn't agree more. If you can find the answers or help your people find the answers, so much the better.
Or let your people help you find the answers also. So final question, what's one leadership practice that you keep at the forefront of your mind at all times?
I think feedback, I alluded to it earlier. I think one of the primary responsibilities of any good leader, let alone a great leader, is the ability, and forget ability, the commitment to engage with your people in an honest, constructive way on an ongoing basis. None of this once a year annual review nonsense. I'm talking about maybe not every day, but as appropriate over time, engage your people. Give feedback on what's working well, help them understand where they can do better, but make it actionable, make it constructive, and personalize it to them.
Excellent. It's got to be actionable. And I want the audience to pick up one word or one concept Ken just mentioned there. Also, what's working well. Feedback is not not everything's a learning opportunity. Not every situation you need to teach something, but feedback, it's so motivational when you give that feedback, but it can't be good job, Ken. It's got to be good job, Ken. You did a good job specifically. That's the way to motivate people. So thank you, Ken.
Yeah. I mean, what I use a little formula that says, this is what I observed. This is the impact it has. This is how I suggest you make an adjustment.
Or keep going, keep doing it. This
Or
is the
keep
impact it
going.
had. You do it again, replicate it, repeat it. Absolutely.
And
And
it's
that's
a real, I'm sorry, it's a real simple formula.
It is. But that's the part, unfortunately, people haven't been taught. And it hasn't been handed down to them by their boss about the impact. If people understand the impact, they're willing to make a change, or they're willing to continue doing something. That's a good point. Thanks, Ken. All right. Well, this has been Stephen Howard with discussions on great leadership. My guest today has been Ken Summers. Highly recommend that you look him up on LinkedIn. And if you need any HR consultancy work out there, he's the guy to go to. So thank you very much. Thanks, Ken.
Thanks for having me, Stephen. Have a great day.
Same to you.